All right, welcome back in. Hanging with Hester, presented by Richards Honda. Ronnie Rance, my co-host here with me on a
Good song choice.
yeah. Ronnie went and got headphones so he could listen to Justin Bieber. Well, we called Chris Blair. We said, "Hey, Chris, what song do you want as you come in?" He said, "Justin Bieber, Yummy, please." So we said, "CB, we'll get it done." Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, and that I've never known you to lie, Jacob. Dumbfounded.
Oh, I thought we'd have a little fun with you there, CB. Hey, let's start off with LSU Hoops before we get to LSU Baseball. Tough loss, but a loss where you saw some fight. They lose 88-82. They were down big, double digits in the second half, but they made a comeback. They got it down to 1 point. You saw some fight from this team. And CB, when I dig into the stats, I mean, they were 41% from beyond the arc. They out-rebounded Alabama. They didn't really turn it over a ton. And so when you look at it, it's one of those games where you're like, okay, you thought LSU would be in it till the very end, and they were, but just the lapse there in the score, and Alabama seemed to make a big shot when they absolutely had to. They didn't miss the key shots in the game.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's one of those games where you look at the final score, and then you look at the stats, and then you happen to see the way that game played out. You know, they were down by 18 early in the second half when Alabama came out in the second half. They led by 11 at the break, and then, you know, they picked up where they left off, hitting shots. I mean, they had 3 back-to-back plays where they drove under the basket, found a guy in the left corner or the right corner, and they hit big threes. And suddenly an 11-point lead just ballooned up, and you thought, you know, this is where you'll see what this team's made of. And, you know, to their credit, and really no surprise, they battled back, got it within 1, you know, had their chances down the stretch. But when you really break down what the difference in that game was, you're talking about Lewis and Shackelford for Alabama, both at times unstoppable in that game. And you're looking at Darius Days, who, again, on the road has trouble staying in games. And he fouls out of this one, got 3 fouls early in the first half, picked up his 4th within 2.5 minutes of the second half. And when you look at LSU's lineup, you know, Smart, Mays, Watford, Williams, you're looking at 40 minutes, 38 minutes, 39 minutes, 29. And then you see Darius Days with 14 minutes.
Right.
Now, you can easily then point to the box score and go, all of those other 4 were in double figures, and Darius comes away with 6 points, and maybe even more importantly, just 5 rebounds. And that's kind of the story of this team. And they cannot be without really any of those 5. But when it comes to rebounding and counting on double-digit scoring, I mean, you got to have Darius Days in the game. And, you know, that's not a slight to Darius. I'm not so sure it was the best whistle I've ever seen in an SEC game, to be completely honest with you. But still, I mean, you got to find a way to keep him on the floor, and he's got to find a way to keep himself on the floor, because when Alabama's best players are playing at that level, you got to have LSU's players playing at that level, and it doesn't help when you got Darius on the sideline.
Chris, we've talked about LSU's bench for a couple of weeks now, and you did get a piece back. You did get Manning back. Obviously, you're going to work him in, and first time out, gave you 16 minutes, only gave you 2 points, gave you 3 rebounds. How much do you think he gets integrated back into the lineup on Tuesday against Kentucky?
Yeah, I'll give him a little bit of a pass there, because I thought he played much better than I thought he would coming back. And he had a couple of really strong defensive plays that, you know, a guy who's coming off that type of injury, we're talking about leaping defensive plays that I just wasn't sure if physically and mentally he was going to be ready to do in game 1 back, but he was. You know, I think the scoring's going to come. I mean, I didn't expect him to have a breakout game offensively coming off that injury, but he's going to be huge, because, I mean, you look, 5 points off the bench in that game. You know, and again, the starters for Alabama carried the load as well, but they did have 13 bench points. So, you know, you lose that 13-5, and then you have one of your starters who's only in the game 14 minutes. That's a tough recipe to overcome, especially on the road. That's a tough recipe to overcome if you're playing at home. But I think Manning's going to continue to get in there, and it won't shock me if those minutes, again, based on his health, based on what the trainers and doctors tell Coach Will Wade and the staff, I mean, I think his minutes are going to go up, because I think he does add a little more defense there, especially when you're matched up against a team that's going to have 3 true guards. In most of that game, that's what Alabama went with. It'll be a little different against Kentucky. They're a little bigger. They match up with LSU, I think, a little bit better based on personnel. But I still think you're going to see him a lot more as far as as long as he's able, rather, to progress with that injury.
Talking with Chris Blair. Chris, you know, this team and this group, particularly the core nucleus, over the last 2 years really hasn't gone through a stretch like this struggle with wins and losses. And where's the psyche? You travel with the team, you see the frustration, that maybe the players and the coaches have, and is this like anything they've gone through before?
No, you're right. I mean, for a lot of these guys, this is the first time. I think, the one silver lining and all that is Skylar Mays has been through it, and that helps when you got a 4-year guy. I mean, he certainly has taken his lumps in his first 2 seasons, certainly his rookie campaign. So that's going to help a little bit because he's such a calming force to this team. But I thought the psyche was okay. I mean, the thing that, we've been talking about for, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks now is that it's almost a blessing and a curse that the continued issues for this team are what they're trying to fix. In years past, it was, they got to do better rebounding, or they got to protect the ball better, or they, got to get to the foul line, or they've got to get to the paint. There was always something they were working on. This year, it seems to be the same couple of things game in and game out, which I know is frustrating for the staff, and I know it's a grind on the players because it's not something they want to do. There were, some mental miscues and some turnovers late in that game on Saturday that you hope you don't see with guys who are playing that many games and that many minutes. But who am I to say that? I'm sitting over there courtside. These guys are in the battle. But I think the psyche overall is pretty good. And I think we're going to see what type of swing and fight they bring tomorrow night, because tomorrow night is a must-win game. I mean, we've kind of mentioned must-win games against Missouri. I think Alabama on the road, you say must-win. I don't know if it was a must-win, but it would have been a great win to pick that up on the road, going into this last stretch of the season. But the game tomorrow night, there's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. It's a must-win. You've got to win at home, and you've got to beat a team that currently is 1 game ahead of you in the SEC standings. And, oh, by the way, it happens to be John Calipari in Kentucky. So I'm interested to see how they bounce back. I didn't sense anything any different from the disappointing losses earlier in the year to what we saw traveling back from Tuscaloosa on Saturday. But they know they've got their work cut out for them. They know they've got to make some improvement. And again, I think on paper this team matches up much better. I know people think I'm crazy here, but I think this team matches up much better personnel-wise with Kentucky than they do with Arkansas, and then they do with Vanderbilt, and to a certain degree based on who Alabama goes with Alabama.
You do get a little jolt as well from Auburn losing to Mizzou. And so after you lose to Alabama, you see that, and then you know what you're playing for on Tuesday night as well. Not that you need motivation, CB, to play against Kentucky at home. It's going to be a great crowd, regardless of records. When Kentucky comes to town, they bring the show with them, right? And it's going to be a great crowd. The building's going to be packed. But I think Auburn losing to Mizzou should give this team an extra little, jolt there as they play Kentucky, and then we're right back in the same situation if LSU wins.
There's no question. I mean, that's exactly what you put out there for this team. Hey, guys, we had a setback. Okay, we're not, atop the league by ourselves. We're not even in a tie at the moment. But now we have the opportunity against the team that's right ahead of us, and don't have to worry right now in this moment about any other team or who else is playing anybody else. We've got a chance to put Kentucky behind us. And, we play them right on our home floor. I mean, it's a kind of a perfect scenario. Now you just have to meet that challenge and go out and execute and do the things that LSU has shown all year that is their strengths. I was disappointed Saturday, and I know the coaching staff was, in the free throw battle. Again, you shoot the ball as well as they did on the road, which hasn't been their strong suit. You combine that with getting to the line and knocking down free throws, you win that game in Tuscaloosa. But Alabama beat you in free throws. They were the more aggressive team. They beat LSU most of the game in the 50-50 balls, and that typically doesn't happen. So if you take care of all that against the Kentucky team, you've got as good a chance to win as anybody in the country.
Chris, so I know you're right now in the middle of basketball season, but baseball's just got cranked up. And when will you do your first baseball game?
Well, if the weather would cooperate, hopefully going to be this coming Saturday, or Sunday, rather. I should be back for the Eastern Kentucky game, should everything be nice, and they play that game on Sunday. It was supposed to be there, obviously, for Sunday's game that was moved up due to impending weather, and they played the doubleheader on Saturday. So I had a chance in Tuscaloosa to watch the game on Friday. Listened and caught a little bit of the game on Saturday, and then caught most of the end of the game on Saturday night.
Any reaction to what you saw?
Yeah, I mean, I thought for the first two games, I was pleasantly surprised at what the lineup was able to produce. And some of the guys that I know the staff were high on, some of the newcomers that you were expecting to be in the lineup and to provide some hitting at the plate, were able to do so. And, again, it's the first weekend of the season. And, I've only been around 5 years, Ronnie, but I have seen in those 5 years, the sky is falling multiple times, beginning of the season, middle of the season, and I always laugh because I've been around enough to know that the guys that we saw this past weekend who had great weekends and great starts to their careers are only going to get better as they develop in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months. So that's optimistic for me. And for the guys who maybe didn't have their best weekend on opening weekend, it's kind of the same thing. I can point to a number of players. I'm sure you could sit here for the next hour and point to players who started out in February who, maybe didn't play their best and then suddenly became integral to the team, whether it be the end of March, middle of April, or down the stretch in May. So I was encouraged. I mean, you open up the weekend, you win the series. You had to play 2 on Saturday, which certainly wasn't in the plans, but it's part of the game. I think this team is, again, I think it's nothing but a ceiling from here this point out, and that's kind of the way I felt going into the weekend as well. So my mindset didn't change at all based on what happened this weekend.
All right, he is Chris Blair, the voice of the LSU Tigers. CB, we look forward to your call tomorrow against Kentucky, and hopefully LSU gets back on track. I know the building will be rocking, and I know you're looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I am, man. And I tell you what, Coach Brady said it best at the end of the broadcast Saturday. I know it's an 8 o'clock game, but it's Kentucky. They're coming to LSU. There's something to play for Will Wade and this Tiger crew. I really hope that place is filled up and loud from the time the ball goes in the air. In fact, I'll do one better. From the time they introduce the starting lineups till the Tigers come away with a victory, I hope the place is rocking. It should be. Those guys deserved it.
All right, there he is, Chris Blair. Chris, we always appreciate your time on Mondays.
Thanks, guys. Go Tigers.